Welcome back. It's Bonanza Disc Golf Round 2 of the KC Flying Disc Challenge. 2-day, 4-round tournament. I am so tired. About to start. I'm on hole 10 because I'm outside the cash by 1 or 2 strokes. I really just got to play like a toned down game and commit to every shot because I am like dead tired from kind of the antics of this week, which you'd know about if you've been following a little closely. I'm gonna try to shoot a good round. Try to get back into cashing position. Wearing a polo because I'm a fancy golfer. Let's get to hole 1. All right, so if you couldn't tell by that, I am definitely tired going into the second round, kind of thinking about what shot to throw, and I have my Ricky 2-time destroyer in my hand. If you guys watched the first round yesterday, you know that I wasn't throwing this thing super well. It's kind of my neutral overstable one, and learning the hyzer flip points has been a struggle, but it's a kind of tight fairway with OB on the left and jail on the right. I throw what I think is just the perfect shot, just gonna slide up there and flip enough. Gets a little bit high and doesn't sit, unfortunately, so it leaves us in the OB after the first shot with 410-foot upshot towards the basket. Obviously frustrated by that, but a couple things real fast. Big shout outs again to my caddy, Sebastian and Jessica. We're gonna have the scoring at the bottom left carry over from each round. I'm ranging there to 410 feet, so I pull out my neutral flippy destroyer, my EchoStar one, because I also have this tree that's just in front of me that I have to kind of get around. So I have to flip something up and have it come back to the left. I do a couple warm-ups because I have not been really committing to any of my shots either at Waterworks or in that first shot, and so I decided to actually commit through one. Ended up throwing this one about 30 or 40 long in the basket, so a really big rip. Great shot, but not close. We'll have to pitch up and take a bogey unless we can drain like a 70-foot putt on the first hole of the day. Now you might notice that I'm trying a new type of step putting. It's just an inline step putt instead of my straddle step putt. I had noticed when I started practicing it just before this tournament, it was leaving me a little bit closer bids, and honestly, from there, on a slightly elevated basket, to give it that sort of bid as the first putt of the day, a little bit confidence inducing, even though I didn't make the putt, but we're able to tap in, unfortunately, take a bogey, because I was really wanting to have a bogey free round this tournament, but when you start off with a bogey, you kind of got to get your revenge, which moves us into hole number 2, which is a 670-foot par 4. Now, I didn't actually talk about this course yet. It's called La Bonite. It's one of the longer courses for the tournament. It's a par 63, 8,700 feet long. It's really not my favorite course, especially this back 9 that we're starting on, because it kind of reminds me a lot of Denver golf, and then there's a lot of wooded holes on the front 9, which is going to be exciting to play through, but I definitely want to get my scoring done on this backside so that when we get into the woods, since I haven't really had to practice throwing through too many gaps, I don't want to force myself to have to take great scores on the wooded parts, even though I know that I can play in the woods. That confidence just isn't quite there, so if I go in there with a solid score, I'll feel a little bit better. Now the basket is sitting on a mound right there. I ranged it to about 310 feet, but I do have a slightly low ceiling that I have to negotiate out of the gap, and there's OB to the right. And you make sure that I don't flip anything over to the right. So basically, because everything is a little bit flippier down here, or at least it holds that mid-flight turn a lot more, I'm really having to lean on overstable stuff this tournament since I only had 2 days to really learn my discs. So I'm going to be throwing my slightly more stable strike, the Color Glow strike, and just try to keep it low and punch it right at the basket and just put it into the berm of the hill. Now I do leave it a little bit high out of the hand on a slight amount of turn. Not the best upshot, but it should leave us with a pretty simple up and down. I didn't throw it OB. We're not going to be taking another bogey, but I do have a just outside the circle look at the birdie, just into a headwind. So not ideal on an elevated basket. Still was able to give it a really solid bid, which I'm stoked on, able to tap in for a par. And that was kind of a confidence-inducing hole because I threw a good drive, a decent upshot, had a solid putt. We have some longish holes coming up, so being able to get a couple good rips in on par 4s gives me some confidence moving into hole number 12. Hole number 12 is a 327-foot par 3 with a low ceiling, kind of either way that you want to get to the basket. I did get a turnover mid-range there in practice, but I felt like the best play was a chop over forced forehand with my 2021 Calvin Destroyer, which is very stable and very domey. So when it kind of gets over after being on the anhyzer, it kind of lifted a little bit. Ended up being parked. Moving us into hole number 13 with the first birdie of the round and some good momentum, which is good because this is a 400-foot hole, slightly uphill into a slight headwind. I'm going to be throwing my SDS Destroyer that I got from a buddy, Matt, in Colorado. It's pretty stable, but not crazy overstable, not quite like my 2021 Calvin. So if I put it on some anhyzer, it's going to flex in it through this middle gap, but it will still get out of it and give me a lot of glidey distance. I put this one on the other side of that tree cluster it's right in front of in practice, so I knew it'd have the distance, but it leaves me pin high just about 40 feet. We have been working on this stepper. It's definitely feeling good. The wind, as you can hear a slight bit, is affecting the putt, but I'm trying not to let that get in my head. and we're able to drain another step putt, bringing us to +2 putting for the tournament, meaning we've made 2 more circle 2 putts than we missed circle 1 putts. I've been letting wind get into my head a lot for putting, when sometimes if it's like minimal wind and you're spinning the disc well, it's not really going to do too much. Hole 14 is a 395-foot par 3, very Denver hole, just like throwing a hyzer to the basket. So I put this one on slight hyzer to flat into a slight crosswind. I honestly forget which way it was. Ends up getting a little bit of a skip right down to the basket, pretty much parking us. I mean, this might be in the bullseye. I don't really know what 3 meters looks like because I'm a silly American, but we go to 4 down, which I'm super stoked on. I really like hole 15 because it's a little bit of a break from all these like kind of wide open holes. It's 270 feet either through the left or right gap, probably left gap if you want to take a forehand at it. I decided to throw my Pathfinder at it and ended up just not quite turning it over and getting it low enough like I wanted to. I'm a little scared of like the flip points of discs right now. And as you guys saw there, I changed out from wanting to kind of putt this because of the low ceiling. I'd have to give it a lot of height to get it to the basket to maybe give it a bid where I can get on a knee and actually bid it with that zone. Don't tell anybody that that was a bid because it was pretty poor, but we're able to tap that in for a par, which we cannot be frustrated about, although the birdie streak would have been nice to have been kept alive. It'd be great to get back out on this hole because 16 is an 817-foot par 4 that we're playing into a headwind. So I take that Calvin Destroyer and just rip it on some anhyzer because I know it's going to get out of it, and there is a path pretty far to the right that like I could try to hyzer flip something, but I talked about this a little bit in the last video, and you're also not seeing my blue Ricky Destroyer because of what is happening with my head and these discs right now, because I just got to this elevation, which is sea level, from being in Denver, and I understood some of the flip points of my discs in Denver, but here everything, once it flips up and over, it rides it for a much longer time than it did in Denver. Real quick, I'm going to throw this SDS Destroyer on a little flex line as well because it's slightly less stable, so it'll hold it a little bit longer, but I know it'll still come out of it. But what I'm talking about with flip points is I don't quite know where my EchoStar Destroyer, what level of hyzer I need to put it on to have it flip up and barely turn versus flip up and turn over and never come back versus just flip up to flat. And so I can trust if I put something on the anhyzer angle that I want it to go on, I can trust that it'll come out of it, but I can't really trust that things are going to flip up to a specific point. Saw me drain that putt there, which is a really good 3. To get that birdie and to add another plus to the putting percentages, that was a weird way to say that, I'm really stoked on. Did not expect to get that one in practice, but I'm really happy that I did. Hole number 17 is a 390-foot par 3. I'm needing to throw inside of this tree, but I just throw on the outside of it, get a skip off the OB path, back in bounds. It puts me into a tree that's pin high. Pitching up was not super great because I was trying to bid that, but like I said, another par we're not too mad at. We would like to keep the birdie train alive, and the next hole is a good one to get back onto it because hole 18 is the 930-foot par 5, which is just basically 310-foot shots, or maybe a little bit more and a little bit easier of a last shot. This was none of the shots that I wanted to throw. I was really trying to really force over that SDS Destroyer and get it between a couple trees out there. Ends up luckily not getting stuck behind this tree, but is under it with a very low ceiling out. Here I'm trying to confer with my caddy to see whether I should throw a fairway or a distance driver. There is OB right, which is a road, and we still have, I don't know, probably 700-ish feet into the basket, maybe closer to 650. I have my EchoStar Destroyer in my hand because it's my neutral understable destroyer, and I know I can rip it on a little bit of hyzer and trust that it will flip to some point. I just don't quite know how far that is. So I decided to throw that instead of my fairway driver to really try to bite off as much distance as I possibly could. And I end up giving it a massive rip. Super stoked because that Destroyer just glides for days. Those Jessica Weiss ones, they are phenomenal. It leaves me only 250 feet into the pin, but a really bad angle because that metal stuff there is hazard. So I'm wanting to throw a spike hyzer with my Firebird, just trying to give it the height and the width, and end up just throwing the perfect shot. Puts me about 10 to 15 feet behind the basket, maybe closer to 20, or able to tap that in for another birdie. So through 8 holes, we're 4 down, feeling great about it so far, especially because we are going to be going into the woods, which I'm definitely less confident in. Hole number 1 here, which is our 9th hole, is a 430-foot par 3 with OB to the left, especially because we have a right to left wind that was pretty heavy. So when you throw something into right to left wind, basically like aiming at it, you start throwing it into a headwind. So when I put my SDS Destroyer on a little bit of turn, it just really got held over. I definitely thought it'd flex out more and get pushed by the wind, but I threw it a little bit too low and a little bit too turn. I'm really not mad at it. I'm just going to step up here with a jump putt and try to put it close to the basket. Do a good job of that. I know this is one that I probably can get with the perfect shot, but I wasn't planning on getting this one in practice either. Well, number 2 is one of my favorites on the course. It's 675-foot par 4. There's OB on top of that ridge, and there's OB in the woods. I'm taking my origin, I'm just going to throw it on a hyzer flip line, which I thought was absolutely perfect because I felt a little bit of right to left wind, but I didn't really account or walk up to the center of that gap because the middle of the gap is just a straight ripping headwind, meaning that once it got into that gap and was going straight down it, it just kept on turning and never really got the chance to flex out. So probably something where I should have thrown a Pathfinder or just a forehand because I was out of bounds by about 3 feet and I have 350 feet in. I'm throwing my SCS Destroyer because, like I said, again, I'm not trusting the flip points, but I was kind of forced with my stance to throw that on hyzer, so I should have accounted for that and thrown my Echo Star Destroyer. I thought that I had thrown it OB. Luckily, it was called safe by the spotter in the back, and it was safe just barely, so I'm just pitching down, taking my medicine. Kind of a poor pitch down, but I'm within 15 to 20 feet. Almost missed the putt, but we tap in for our bogey. Hole 3 on the course, getting into the woods, is 259-foot par 3. It's a weird little line. You could throw like a flip-up forehand. I decided to throw my zone on a force-over and hyzer straight down the gap, which is a very good feeling to get into the woods for the first time really in the tournament and be able to pure one of these lines because we will have a lot more wooded lines coming up, especially coming from Denver. That's a big confidence booster. I'm deciding whether to putt inline kind of through this weird gap between a couple trees, but I'm definitely not confident in that yet. So I'm deciding to straddle out here from a knee from 40 feet because I ranged it to see if I was outside the circle. Give it a really good bid, just leave it a little bit right. And I have been missing right with a lot of any straddle putts. My normal straddle putt, my straddle step putt. Able to tap in for the par though, so it's definitely something that I want to work on so that I can take advantage of some of those opportunities as I hopefully play a lot more wooded courses throughout the rest of the year. Hole number 4 is a 550-foot par 4, a pretty difficult get because you have a low ceiling and a small gap to go through. I'm throwing my normal kind of just swirly strike, and I just early released it again. If you guys remember yesterday, whenever I threw it, basically, I just early released it. And I am scratching my head because I'm so confused. I felt like I threw it pretty decent, but it's just slipping off my fingers. And at that point, I actually picked it up, and before I put it back in my bag after I'm deciding what shot to throw here, I wiped it off completely with a towel. Pretty poor shot. It could have been good if I would actually snap my wrist instead of trying to just force it over with my arm. Use a little more wrist than arm when you're trying to throw a touch shot. Maybe I should tell myself that next time. But I wiped off my strike, and we're going to throw it again this round, and we'll see if wiping it off actually did anything. So, spoiler alert, maybe, but maybe you just remember to wipe off your discs. I'm kind of looking through a bunch of these weird gaps because I got the skip to the right, which really leaves me with nothing. I want to be able to go through something straight, and so I'm deciding to forehand my Pathfinder, and this time I do remember to just kind of give it more wrist. Still a little bit too much arm, not quite as much wrist, so those are some shots that I might want to go to like a woodsy pitch and putt course and work on, but leaves us another step putt, and we've been on. Unfortunately, I just don't commit. I'm kind of undercommitted on that, which I've been undercommitted on a lot of putts recently. This round, some other rounds, just all over the place. And it's kind of weird because when I overcommit, nothing bad ever happens. So I'm kind of confused by that. We take a bogey, move us into hole number 5, a 291-foot par 3. Just straight down this tunnel. I'm throwing my Pathfinder on just a simple hyzer flip, giving it a ton of speed because there's a berm at the back that if I throw it low into the ground, it's going to curve around towards the basket, which is exactly what it did. Hole 6 is 342-foot par 3. There's one tree to miss in the middle if you want to kind of take the straight at it line. So I'm choosing between my color glow strike because I haven't been trusting this strike, the swirly one.
Right. Straight skip.
So clean your discs if you're misreleasing them, because I genuinely think a lot of dirt has been like just built up on that for ages since I really didn't throw it very much until this week. And once I cleaned it off, I was able to get a clean release. Hole number 7 is 255 feet. I'm throwing my flat top Firebird here. Kind of a good shot, kind of not a good shot. I didn't really force it down like I needed to. I threw it on the right anhyzer angle, but not the right nose angle to get it down, pitch up, and take our par. Now this moves us into the last 2 holes of the course, and I know that I want to get at least one of them for the birdie. This is a very difficult par 5, surprisingly, because it's only 675 feet. Hole 8 here, I want to actually take a quick look to see how it played for the weekend. I decided to throw my Ultra. Yeah, I played 0.25 over par at less than 700 feet for a par 5, which is kind of nuts. I threw my Ultra to kind of the perfect landing zone, and now I'm looking through this left side gap with all of my discs right there on the ground, and I'm deciding to go with my flippiest heat because I want to try to hyzer flip it to give it an eagle bid. I put it to 60 feet from a little bit further than this on the fairway in practice, and I throw just a beautiful line. Hyzer flip starts going down the fairway. I thought it was perfect, and then I just see it kick out, unfortunately. Still leaves me with a relatively simple up and down because it's a shortish hole, but just imagine if I would have got through one of those gaps and didn't kick backwards, I could be in an inside the circle look for that eagle, which would have been pretty sick because there were no eagles on the weekend, unfortunately. But that brings us 7 down. I know that if I can just get this one last one, I'll feel confident that I get a 1,000 rated round, because I felt like I was playing good enough, but just not quite phenomenal. And I pure the line with my Pathfinder on, I think, a 290-ish foot par 3 around the gap. And so frustrated by that putt because it's my first missed circle 1 putt of the round. Hello from the editing bay, which is in Walmart. Yeah, last putt did not go well. But the great thing about this round is it moved me up 20 spots. So from tied 36 at the beginning to tied 16th. So squarely back in the cash, because the cash line is 27, because it's like 68 people in the tournament. And overall, a good round. Ended up being 1,002 rated. As of right now, maybe that'll fluctuate a little bit, but could have been 10, 11 if I would have just made that last putt. And I was so frustrated about that. You can ask my cat. Maybe don't ask my caddies, because that was probably bad for them. Like how pissed off I was that was the last putt. Hoping that we don't bring that momentum into tomorrow, which is going to be tomorrow's video, the first round. But overall, a round that I am okay with. Like, it's another round that's like, it's not great. We'll call it a good round. Like, it's not a great round for that to be 1,000 rated and know that there's like still so much more in the tank. I'm pretty happy with. So definitely move this up in the tournament. Now we're just trying to stay in the cash, maybe fight for a top 10 because we're only 3 strokes out of that, I think. So tomorrow we have 2 courses at the same property, which is super exciting. I think it's going to go 1 video tomorrow and 1 video Wednesday. I was going to do 2 in a day, and then I realized that's just a lot of work on my plate and I need like some time to rest. So that's what I did most of the day, which is why it's like so nighttime when I'm editing this video. But I really hope that you did enjoy it. More tournament coverage and more like, whoa, normal stuff coming to the channel really soon. I got some discs to review. I got some form stuff that we probably need to talk about. But overall, I mean, I was throwing it well. I was putting all right. 100% from C1X except for that last putt. So can't even say that that's my first 100% C1X for the year. Hopefully we get that in 2 weekends when I have my next tournament. And yeah, let's stay in the cash tomorrow. If you want to check out the first round, if you haven't seen that yet, check that out right down there. But if you want to see another tournament, if you've already watched that round, check my last week's tournament right down there. Really solid and really fun. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay, love you. Bye.